Okay, I'm going to call the meeting of the Board of Education on Wednesday, March 13th to order. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? We are the only people in the room tonight, so there's no public comment in the room. Chat, do you have any public comment online? Okay, so we will move right into the facility and finance discussion. We're under a little bit of a time crunch tonight because of the Board of Finance meeting at 7. But Bill stepped out to make us some copies. So we don't have Bill yet.
Right. But you do have, well, he's making copies, so maybe you
Yes.
don't have it in front of you.
No, we're looking at his, oh yeah, his February report.
Yeah.
And the February narrative. Does anyone have questions on the February narrative? Maybe we could just get those written down before Bill comes back into the room. There he is. Thank you, Bill. And now Bill is here, so he could even answer your questions. All right, Bill, we are on to your report. Do you want to come on up to the microphone?
So on the, I guess I'll try to give a line item 560 here for tuition. It says we're having some savings this year because kids are returning to district. So is our budget line for next year adjusted, assuming that as well? Or what did we go with for next year, knowing that, I mean, we're almost saving $115,000 there. Okay, thank you.
It's great. Any other questions for Bill on his monthly report? Bill, do you have comments you want to make about your report?
Well, I think we're still, online. There's nothing, I think nothing to be too worried about at this point. I think as Christine mentioned, two outplaced students have returned. One returned at the end of February and one just returned middle of March. So between now and the end of the year, we should see some savings in tuition and special ed transportation to help offset some additional maintenance costs. We had this month, again, February, the motherboard of the fire panel blew up, so that was a $7,000 repair. Another compressor has died. And so now we haven't got the quote yet to fix that, and that's for March. But again, usually those run $8,000 to $9,000. So those are the two major expenses that have happened in the maintenance area. But otherwise, as far as supplies, we're in good shape. Payroll and all those benefits, health insurance, shouldn't be any unexpected surprises. So, again, we're projecting at the end of the year to be pretty much the same as last year, really, in that area. But, do anything at the end of the year, or, you know, we get any additional expenses, we should be able to cover them. So I think we're in good shape for the current year.
Other questions for Bill?
Just, again, that's $15,000 in not really maintenance, but capital from
Repairs.
repairs that shouldn't necessarily be on our side. So I guess my concern is just in this discussion I'm having with the capital meeting, that doesn't seem to be coming to the forefront for the discussion. Again, it's sort of being pushed to the back. So I'm open for suggestions on how do we get them to understand that, again, in another month of February, we have $15,000 more. It wasn't just replacing filters, it's
Major repair.
major repair that would consider by capital definition, a capital item.
Because of the technology now and the sophistication of the equipment, people have got to realize that a motherboard goes, it's not, oh, it's a few $100s and we fix it. You know, it's thousands of dollars. One of the, you know, RT units go, or the sensors go. All these things add up pretty fast. And I think, as Christine pointed, they're expensive to fix.
Yeah, and the point, one of the points is we deducted from the budget, right? We had increased the budget because of these things. And then we decided to take $25,000 out, thinking the town would fund some of these things. So we would be keeping our fingers crossed, right? And hoping that things don't break next year, right? But there's a good chance things will break next year. And just a thought, just going to throw it out there because we're talking about this now, and we're going to be talking about the non-lapsing fund. And there is some significant amount there, even after deducting everything you voted on. To get us through next year, I wonder if the board considers reallocating certain amount up to handle stuff like that, if the fingers crossed doesn't work.
Yeah,
Well-
and I don't, sorry, I was just gonna say, I don't know that we have to reallocate at this point, but I think we
Yeah.
definitely should keep in our rear view mirror, basically, that we can't spend that whole non-lapsing account because we know that if these things come up, that's where we are going to have to pay for it because we did cut that line item.
I think it also might be helpful for you to just note this and at your next meeting, $15,000 over the course of 2 months is a big number. I'm happy to talk to Bob about it and just sort of put that back on his radar. But the good thing that we know is that we didn't cut what we funded that line item at this year, right? And we're still fixing things, even though we're over, we're still making it work within our budget. And Bill's telling us, even with all of this happening, we're still projected to come in between $30,000 and $50,000. So I don't, while I agree with you, ultimately, I'm not sure that this should be on our side of the ledger. I don't know that we're in total panic mode. We didn't cut the line item to zero. We're funding it just like we're funding it this year.
Right, but also when you take into account like the 2 students coming back, that's $115,000 windfall that we probably are not anticipating next year. So, you know, by grace, we are fortunate that we're able to cover it, but I just think we cannot continue to put these kinds of items into our school with a operating budget.
Yeah, I agree.
Well,
So,
and the 30 to 50 that you have in here is before we take a look at the compressor, correct? Like this was written before that occurred,
Correct.
which means that we're taking another 15,000 off that
Well,
30,000
8, so, yeah.
or 8,000 or so off of that.
But I think Christine's
30.
point is correct. We are able to cover things this year because of the savings in special education. Next year, the next year's budget, April gave us a budget with those students being in-house. So we did, well, as we all know, we took big cuts in special education. And we cut general building services to make that only maintenance, preventive maintenance, and the idea was to move all the repairs to the repair line. So there's potential for a shortage. And so obviously the answer is we're going to fall back on non-lapsing to cover maintenance costs, where in the past we fell back on non-lapsing to cover technology costs.
If there's a $15,000 that we're spending that meets the definition of capital, is there a way to kind of drive back? So if it meets the definition of capital and the capital is not going to be on our side, or has that not happened yet?
It's not happened yet.
It's
Okay,
not
that's
happening
in-
for
that's in
this
the
budget
works.
cycle. So,
Or it's not happening for 24, 25
mm-mm,
for sure.
yeah,
So
so.
we'll continue to cover our, any capital. Is that right?
Well, they're working on like capital, I guess the discussion was to be, where do we fit these line items? Does it go on town side, our side? Where does it go? That discussion is kind of being held off until later this fall. We were hopeful that it would be part of this budget cycle. So there's no way to like go back to the town and say we had this other than ask for an appropriation, which certainly isn't off the table. I don't think, if we can't get this figured out. But also to Troy's point, kind of thinking it out loud, I'm wondering if we need to flag some money in the non-lapsing, so when an emergency comes up, we don't have to call a special meeting to approve those things. And we certainly don't have to do that tonight, but I'm just wondering if that's something the board wants to consider, because these things come up as an emergency and they can't wait for us to come in and approve a $5,200 line item when they have to fix something. So do we flag an amount of money for those things, or just something to think about? We don't have to do that tonight.
Certainly something to think about how we're gonna handle it, but I think it requires additional and continuing, obviously. excuse me, communication with that group that you're working with. They need to know that this stuff it's happening in real time. Okay, other questions for Bill? Okay. Great. So let's move on to the non-lapsing account. I think everyone has copies. Good. So Troy had something come up in regards to the security camera wiring that he wanted to speak about.
Yeah, as you know, we've discussed increasing the number of cameras, security cameras on the campus. And there's two major parts of that work. One is actually running wires, which is labor intensive and takes a long time for us to do in-house. But we do believe we can do the camera installation in-house pretty efficiently and not have to pay an outside person to do that. So we're kind of breaking up the project. We got a couple quotes on the wiring. The lowest one, and significantly lower than the other one, is $16,638.11. If the board approves using non-lapsing funds to fund the wiring, we can get going on that, and that would be the first step to getting this done. Later, just so you know, there'll be the purchase of additional cameras, and then the installation of those cameras could be done in-house by our IT department in conjunction with our facilities department.
Do you have an estimate of how many cameras you need and what maybe that would cost? Are we thinking like 10 or 2?
Yeah, no, I think we're talking more like 18 range, and Bill, help me out if you remember more clearly than I do. I wish I had that number off the top of my head. I probably should. But I don't. I think we're talking like 18, 20-ish range. It's in the ballpark of that. It's to cover some hallways that have a camera like only down one side, to cover some stairwells that aren't covered. And you know, that's mainly it, to have increased coverage with security cameras. And we had a whole study done on it. Greg Pont has a whole map, color coded on the map. And I guess I never brought it here because none of you seem to remember either. But I think we're looking at, you know, it may be additional like $20,000 to buy the cameras, something around that. I think it's about $500. No, wait, that wouldn't make sense. I honestly, I shouldn't make it up. I just can't remember the exact numbers. on
This was initially you were thinking about a safety grant.
Yeah, and we did apply and we did not get that safety grant. Last year, we applied for that. There is another opportunity to reapply, and we can certainly do that. It's just that it kind of delays us getting it done. We could also, we could pay for the wiring and then apply for the grant to get the cameras part, and at least we're on our way. And we were delaying a lot last year, hoping we'd get the grant, and then we didn't get it, and that's why we still haven't done it.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have an opinion on whether we should delay or not. I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure we close the loop on the.
Yeah,
on the
well,
idea
yeah,
of
we
the grant.
didn't get it, but there is an opportunity to apply again.
Do people have questions about the camera? About the wiring, I'm sorry.
I guess my only question is, in the description, you have let me see, sorry, it's on the second page. And it says wiring for cameras, security cameras and wiring is 16,638, but that's just the wiring.
That's
not-
just a wiring, yes.
Okay,
And yeah, we updated that to reflect this quote, this lowest quote. But yes, we should have took off. We're not adding, we're adding just a wiring so that we can then add the cameras.
Other questions? This quote that you have here, $16,638.11. Is this the best of three? Is this just your estimate about what you think it's going to cost and you are going to get the three quotes?
It's a specific quote of two quotes, written quotes that we have that are quite detailed. And the other one was quite a bit more
Okay.
than this one.
So this is the one, this is sort of the one that you want to go with?
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone?
Can I make a motion?
Thank you.
I'd like
Yeah,
to
so
make,
we've used this vendor before, who had the lowest quote, and we were happy with their work. So that's another aspect.
should we include some cushion in the
I think so.
motion?
I think there should be some cushion. This was a quote from a ways back, a few months ago. So I'm sure they will honor it, but it would be wise to have a cushion.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to approve from the non-lapsing account for wiring for cameras in the amount of up to $18,000.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Now, the question is, you're putting in 18 to 20-inch cameras. Is this going to cover all your blind spots, all outside areas that you would need covered, things of that nature? Or is this something we're gonna have to come back and look at more wiring in the future, more cameras in the future? Is this gonna be one of those things where we keep adding on and adding on? Or is this where we say, I mean, granted, yes, you have to replace cameras over time. They go, I see it all the time. But are we looking at, have we hit pretty much everything that we're going to need to get coverage on in some way, shape, or form? Or are we going to have to come back to rewire and re-camera or add cameras later on?
I think we'll have really good coverage in the buildings. If we wanted to have really good coverage on every square inch of the school property, then we might want to add cameras in the future. But we do have our external cameras as well.
I'm thinking more
So,
from the external point, like just cameras on the external of the
oh, the
building.
doors,
Yeah,
the
well,
entrances to the
doors,
buildings would be
Maybe looking
good.
into parking lots, things of that nature.
I think we would be good on all of that, like
Okay.
parking lot type stuff. But the far reach of the soccer
I'm
field.
not saying yeah,
maybe.
exactly, not the far side of the soccer field or
Right.
out on the.
And I couldn't find the price, but I mean, Allison Reyes's, one of her emails from back in June of 2022 was that this is a priority for them.
Right.
And it was cameras in the PE hallway and stairways. So, they've been asking for 2 years now to get this done.
Now, is that also because they're trying to make sure to check other things based on student behavior as well? And are there other technologies that might be considered later on down the road to prevent, say, vaping in bathrooms or?
But
that's
we have some of that technology now, the
Okay.
vape detectors.
The ones that are most current or the ones that are like?
I'm
10
not
years
quite
old
sure
and
what the models
don't work?
are, and I think that, none of those things seem to be perfect, as you probably know.
Okay, any other discussion on the $18,000 for the wiring for the cameras?
No, I would just add in that, I mean, we've been trying to get these cameras in one way, shape or form since I think my first meeting on the board, because it was, we have cameras. No, we don't have camera. It's been all, I think we need to get cameras into these spaces. So.
Perfect. Okay, then all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. All right, motion carries. I wanted to make sure that we circled back, if we were talking about non-lapsing, to Jamie's discussion a couple of weeks ago regarding the before and after care program. So I know this isn't a discussion necessarily about before and after care, but about what you anticipate wanting the board to consider to use for the non-lapsing. Do you have thoughts on that, additional information?
I don't really have any additional information. I mean, we were looking at $32,000 just to cover the salary. One thing that may be helpful is adding a little extra on there just to get this started, because we need the person to get the registration up and going. We need a kind of a bunch of other things to kind of get it up and running. But yeah, I think we need a vote to take liability. Is that true? I think that's true. I think we need the board to. We need more.
You need a vote to approve the program as a Board of Ed program.
Right, so we can't do that today because it's not on the agenda. But I wanted to make sure that as we were having a non-lapsing discussion, because I think that as we come into budget season, we do have to consider that there may be things that we use the non-lapsing account for. And I think what Christine's saying about earmarking some money might be something we want to think about. So I want to make sure that that doesn't fall off the radar, Jamie.
Yeah, we really need to get going on this program. Like the more we wait on these 2 weeks, the more it becomes the same issue. We're going to end up being in August again. So I would, if we could, we really need to vote if we could next.
I have a couple of questions. I'm not ready to vote at all. I mean, I would vote no tonight if we were going to do that. I'm still confused as to where this position falls, who's responsible for overseeing it, hiring it, tracking the hours, all of that. If it actually falls at the central office, which we said we weren't going to burden them with, so I'm a little concerned about that, then it should be a line item in our budget. It shouldn't be paid for through the non-lapsing account as a salaried position. So I'm still confused who owns the program, I guess, overall. And I get the feeding the starter funds, but what if the person we hire decides it's not for them in 6 months? Who's going to hire the next one? Who's in charge of that? Where are we at then with the salary? I think that there's a lot more to peel back the onion, per se. I know you want to get it going, Jamie, and I appreciate that, but we do have 3 places in town right now that are covering the needs. They're not at capacity. So I personally would rather we really answer all the questions before we roll it out the door.
So I do think that Jamie probably has the answer to a lot of those questions. And I don't want to, I don't want this to become like sort of an unfair, I didn't ask Jamie to come here prepared to talk about the before and after school plan. I just want to make sure that we keep that ask on the radar. I agree with you that before we vote to fund a position, we have to vote on a program, I would imagine, right? Accepting the liability, all that sort of stuff. So we can put that on the next agenda. I just want to make sure that while we're talking about this, we don't forget that your ask is $32,000. Is that right? Or wait, when you say a little more, what's that number?
It's
Just so that-
whatever anybody wants to do. We have to get this program going. So 32,000 would cover the part-time position at the salary that we had come up with. So, that's not including any of the revenue. That's not including any of the grants. Like none of this can happen until we officially get this going.
Right. So Christine, would it be helpful if I send Jamie an email sort of with the list? I can listen back to the meeting. I can get the list of questions that you have so that when we talk about this, we can make sure that all of the questions get answered so that we are prepared to take the vote on the program, the liability, all of that stuff. And then I don't see why we couldn't add the non-lapsing, that particular expenditure to that conversation as well, to do it all in one time, but make sure that everybody who has a question has that question answered at that meeting. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, I don't mean to be a stickler about it. If I'm the only one with questions and everybody else wants to go forward, I'm only one vote, but I do have a few more questions.
And I think it's an okay exercise in just making sure that everybody understands things. So why don't we do this? Christine, I have your questions on record. I could go back and listen. If anybody else has questions about this program, if they just want to shoot me or quite frankly, Jamie an email, and then we can be ready to discuss the entire thing at our next meeting and take a vote and sort of wrap all of this up for you. Does that sound reasonable?
I actually won't be here at the next meeting,
Oh, no.
Um,
Okay.
but yeah, we could have a vote without me. It's okay.
Well, I think it's important for you to, I think it's important for you to be here to talk about some of those details, but we will figure this out.
Okay.
You and I can talk schedule.
Okay.
If this is a time crunch, is there a possibility to have a special meeting to talk about the before and after school care?
I think every meeting we're having is special between now and May. But we could have
I know
sure.
that, I mean, a meeting special, an extra meeting.
a super special meeting. It actually.
Super
Yes,
special meeting.
yes, we can, of course, we can always,
I mean,
we can
I
always-
When
agree.
is our April meeting?
it's our regular dates, right?
It wouldn't be until April 10th.
Isn't that during?
That is during the
vacation?
break.
So we usually don't
We
do
won't meet
that.
during break.
No.
So
Um,
I know that I have been having a variety of conversations with people who have expressed a great deal of interest in seeing this happen, but also need to know that it's going to happen early enough that they're making those plans. I would like to see us have this discussion sooner rather than later. I understand that moving forward with it may not be something that's comfortable in this meeting, but if we need to have a special meeting in order to get that set up so that we can get answers, have a discussion and move forward with it between now and the next meeting, I think that I am entirely on board to do that because I think that most people are figuring out next year in April.
So just to pull this back for a second, this was not agended as a conversation about the before and after school programming. It was just agended as a non-lapsing discussion. So I don't want to stray too far from that, especially because we are in a special meeting tonight. And I totally agree with you that obviously we have to move sooner than later. So Jamie, why don't
So let me rephrase my statement if that would, because I think that having the discussion is regarding the 32,000, because I think that's our starting point to be able to get somebody to set up the program, have all the things put together and at least get to start paying them so that they can, the details I think that we're looking for come from that director who would be coming in and not necessarily from all of us in that discussion. And so even if we can begin that person working off of that non-lapsing by being able to guarantee that that would be something moving forward, then I think it is a non-lapsing issue because it's whether or not we're willing to put $32,000 out there or up to 32,000 depending on revenue.
I would just so point of information for everybody. I'm actually meeting with a potential director for the program on Monday to go over some logistics, and because of the timing of it is so important to be prepared. There are a lot of forms to fill out, things to do. So I'm having an organizational meeting with the potential director. As superintendent, I am willing to try this program for a year and be the person responsible for hiring the staff. I realize it is adding a layer of work onto the central office, but I'm not sure. I don't want to just assume it's going to be unmanageable. because it might very well be manageable and a good thing for the community. So just so you know, like I'm doing all I can to try to make sure we're on pace for the program to start. I just want you to know that.
And I think that this probably will begin with a vote to accept the liability. Is that correct?
I think when you approve the program, you automatically accept the liability.
Right, so we might be putting the cart before the horse if we're voting to fund something that we're not sure that we're approving. So Jamie, you and I could touch base about your schedule and we'll call a special meeting and we'll get it all done. Troy will have his meeting, so any other questions should be able to be answered then about the structure of the program. I understand it has to be fully vetted, and then funded.
Can I comment regarding
You
this?
can absolutely comment.
Okay. I know it may seem that we're putting the cart before the horse, but I really don't think so, because we can always go back if we didn't approve the program or if the questions weren't answered and those questions are all fair. If they weren't answered to, or if it just didn't work out, we could go back and vote not to use the funds, couldn't we? And the $32,000, I don't, my understanding with all this, we could vote to spend up to $32,000 or $35,000 or whatever it is. But once the program gets started, it's self-sustaining. I don't see us using half that. I don't see us using much of it at all once it gets started, depending on when we start paying the director. But I think that's where it'll stop. Once the program begins, no more is going to need to come from the non-lapsing. So I personally would feel comfortable voting on using a certain amount of the non-lapsing funds to fund this ahead of getting those questions answered, especially since Troy has said that he is willing to hire, you know.
Does anybody else have comment about the order in which we do things? So my last comment is going to be, while I understand sort of the pressure to get this running, I don't see a benefit to voting to spend money that we haven't approved a program to spend it. So if we do it tonight, we still have to wait until we approve a program to be able to move forward. But if someone wants to make a motion, you are free to do so. We are in the non-lapsing section. Thanks, Bill. For the public, the meetings in April are the 3rd and the 17th.
I would make a motion to approve up to $35,000 to fund a before and after school program moving forward into the next year.
Is there a second
I will second.
discussion?
I think even if we won't necessarily turn this into a thing where it's a situation, what it does is let our director or a possible director know that the board is serious about moving this forward. And I think that them having that confidence is going to assist in having somebody who's really committed to making this program work. So.
And I will agree that I think it needs to come off the shoulders of the Board of Ed. It needs to go to the person that, or whoever, a new person taking over so that they can come up with the correct answers. But we can't do that if there's no money in order to make sure that they know that this job is going to be secure. So I can give you all the answers, but really I'm not the expert in this really at all.
Jamie, are we sure that the $32,000, if we're looking to hire this person now, right? That would be like, you'd be looking to hire this person to start working pretty soon?
So I started it hold on, give me 1 second. Do some math.
You do the math. Go ahead.
Okay, I just had to double check my math. So that is to essentially hire the person part-time for 20 hours a week for 40 weeks. So we just kind of decided 40 weeks in as an arbitrary, and that I think it's the school year 13. Yeah, it's 40. So it would be for the school year. That's where I'm basing that number off of. So not beforehand, but I think part of it is that we need to show them that we have the money, that we're ready to go, so that they're willing to work on this on their own prior to this. We could decide to pay them early. This just gives them the buffer. And like we've been saying, we're going to put money into this account that it should be self-sustaining.
And so you feel confident that that number 32,000 covers all the other things that comes with having an employee? Or you're feeling like that 32,000 just provides you the buffer? It's not necessarily paying every dollar of her salary, it's providing the buffer.
It would guarantee 40 weeks of work at part-time. That's all I mean, everything else is going to have to be generated either through an NSEF grant or revenue that's coming into the program.
I have no doubt that the revenue is going to come in. I wouldn't even really suggest this going out of order like this if I wasn't confident that that this program will be approved. It's just a formality in the way, in the order that we're doing things. But I'm certain that it's going to work out. So that's why I personally am willing to go.
Chet, can you give me your number again?
It was up to
Thank
35,000.
you.
I think that this is what we were lacking when we tried to do it in August. We didn't have that kind of guarantee. So we're asking somebody to leave their position, and that person is going to stay in their position until the end of their academic year. Now, this would be giving them kind of that security that that position is paid for the whole year.
I have a job.
You have a job for a year.
Okay, other discussion? All right. All those in favor of approving up to $35,000 out of the non-lapsing account to fund a before and after school programming director position, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Can I simply just clarify, because I didn't say specifically for the director, because it's up to 35 to be able to give them the opportunity to do things that were necessary to start the program as well, right? That was the secondary piece of that. It was to fund for it was simply up to $35,000 for the before and after school care for the coming year.
Not specific to the director's salary.
Okay,
It was the way it was phrased in my original motion.
okay. And of course, those other purchases would be subject to our purchasing policy as well.
No, it would just be, if I understand you correctly, it's just for the salary.
I was looking to make it general enough that if there were other things needed for the before and after school care program that the director needed to give a cushion that would allow them, because it's 35 instead of the 32, in order to give them a cushion to allow them to also purchase things. So it could be for salary or for the purchase of things that would be necessary to start the program and get it going. So yes, it would follow, like, if there were things that needed to be approved separately that were individual, like, physical things, that would have to be approved through us, but it would still be within that an envelope to give a starting process to the before and after school program.
Okay. All those in favor of what Chet said? Say aye. Aye. Opposed? And abstain. Bill, do you have that vote count? Is someone taking that vote count? Oh, perfect. Troy has it. Okay. Okay, motion carries. Moving on to old business, I have the budget on here. Troy, do you have any other comments you want to make about the budget? I just have a couple for anyone who didn't listen to the Board of Finance meeting last Wednesday or Monday evening. Do you want to start?
We just, Stephanie and I had met and came up with this kind of theme for the budgets on the main slide, which is improving the educational experience for our students through initiative and reallocation of funds. Because we think there are several examples of like taking initiative, like, developing the alternative ed program, looking to, educate kids in the community, looking to really improve instructional quality with, a director of teaching and learning or curriculum coordinator, whatever we're gonna call it. The AD, another example, like take an initiative to do something different and to hope for better outcomes. So it's really like innovative thinking, but reallocating the funds, like the savings from special education, right? And hiring an in-house BCBA and et cetera, et cetera. So I think this kind of just describes the theme of the budget.
Thank you.
Well,
Okay. In listening to Bob Carlson present the town's municipal budget last Wednesday, and then the discussion from the Board of Finance on Monday evening, it appears that the additional revenue coming to the town for next year is about $900,000. When you take out the increase for the capital, the municipal budget, and our budget, we're left with about $83,000 that would impact taxpayers. Based on the conversation, because the Board of Finance has had our budget now, so they've been sitting with it a bit, they've been looking through it. And it sounds like what they're going to come to us for is to make a reduction in our budget of about $83,000, because they're going to want to hold the taxpayer harmless in any sort of tax increase. And it appears they did a straw vote. They didn't give any firm direction to Bob Carlson. It appears that they are not going to be looking to touch the selectmen's budget, and I don't believe they're going to ask for a change in the capital either. So I think
That's true. So I've talked to Mike as well.
yeah, so I think that's probably sort of what's rolling towards us tonight. So as I'm thinking about things like our budget and being able to do all of these things that we want to do, I want to make sure that we have that money in the non-lapsing account. If we can't figure out a different way to make that happen, that we're able to still continue to provide what we want to provide to our students. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on that, had you not listened to that meeting. Any other thoughts about the budget? That presentation is happening right after this here, of course, if anybody wants to stay.
I did watch the meeting Wednesday night, and I heard the discussion of what they said, and I understand and appreciate that the Board of Selectmen absorbed any shortfall the last two budget seasons. And that there is the $83,000 that they're not going to touch the selectmen's budget, and I don't want them to touch the selectmen's budget or the capital. But there was a but at the meeting.
Yeah, certainly.
Gary Anino, as a matter of fact, he says, he said that the Board of Selectmen budget's at sound, we're not touching it, we're not this. He says, the Board of Ed's gonna have to be the one to absorb any cut, but I want to hear what they have to say first. So that to me means that they could.
Did you get a sense they absolutely aren't going to use the general fund for anything, which is, in my mind, taxpayer dollars as well?
So again,
Not the general fund, but the,
it was,
undesignated.
they weren't giving official direction on Monday night. Monday night, they were just simply speaking
Yeah.
with Bob about the presentation. There was a member that wasn't present. Sarah Nelson wasn't there for the conversation. And so I don't know what that will look like officially, but I just think it's important that we keep in mind that that seems to be a number, and there was a lot of head nodding about keeping it flat. I've not heard anything about the undesignated fund, but I imagine that that will be in some of the more advanced conversations that they have after our presentation, maybe Monday night.
It sounded to me like they were very willing to listen to what our budget was and want to hear our needs, and then they can decide whether or not our needs are justified. But it seemed to me that they were going to listen to our presentation with an open mind.
Yes, and they've had that presentation now
Yeah.
since they're Thursday of last week?
It'd been Wednesday or Thursday.
So just something to think about as we think about that non-lapsing as well.
Yeah.
Any other questions about the budget in that presentation tonight? Under new business, I have budget communication. I was remiss in not putting this on our agenda sooner, but I think that we need a few strategies and to be ready to excuse me, educate the public regarding our budget. So does anyone have ideas about how they want to do that with our education budget? Last year, there was a presentation that was recorded and I think in person. We were able to refer people to that. Thoughts about the presentation? Or a different way to do it, groups of people we should be talking to?
I think what we did last year was great. And having an in-person presentation after school or whatever time it was, where folks could come and ask questions. I think Christine went to the PTO for one. And I mean, I know it would be a lot of work, but I wouldn't be opposed to having a state of the district things, just some kind of other public thing to come
I
and
think
ask questions.
I'm a little nervous about the schedule for a state of the district
Okay,
because this is rolling out so quickly.
it is.
And I think that would be, right,
Okay.
and it would be important for feedback from the public to be at that Board of Finance meeting potentially on Monday.
Mhm. Any opportunity that you did a lot of work on the Facebook page.
Is that something we
posting
want to
information.
utilize again?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And has the hearing been called yet?
No.
So are there other Facebook things that we could utilize? I mean, I don't know, town group or if
Yeah,
the
certainly.
principal put out there that, please, can you come watch the budget presentation
Yeah.
on Monday or, just
I-
until the hearing is posted, we can push to have people get involved and hear it
I
and
think
see it.
anything
Even-
that we can do.
Even after the hearing is called, we can encourage people to be educated. We can't promote, but we can
Right.
encourage people, we can educate people about our budget. I think that what was helpful last year is that I had that presentation to link to. So the one that you gave, Troy, I was able to post places for people to see.
Is it on our webpage now? Do you know, Troy, the proposed budget? Like, is it kind of front and center when you go onto the district webpage?
I don't think it's real obvious. We could put it on the main page, like the
Right, that
budget
might be- I think
documents,
that
right on the
might be
main page.
helpful.
With this packet with the slides and everything, we could put it right on the main page. We could do that tomorrow.
I'd
And I
like that.
imagine I can link to the presentation tonight, right?
Yeah. Because it's Facebook. I mean, it's YouTube recording. Is that what
Yeah,
you're
so
thinking?
I
So
can,
link- yeah,
I can refer people.
You can link
that.
directly to that, yeah.
Could you have like a short little YouTube video that maybe could either go on the web? Well, I would actually do both, the web page and Facebook, so that people could just get a little snippet of what they want to hear.
Well-
Kind of like a summary.
And
Yeah.
I-
I mean,
I would say even within there, if you're gonna do something even at like linking up to the presentation you do, if there's not a ton of questions, but you think of, this is a question someone might ask, this is where you'd find it in the budget, just kind of do,
frequently asked questions.
Yeah,
Kind of
you know,
section.
do the FAQs and say on this slide or within the video, if you know, go to this minute mark and that's where your answer is to those frequently asked questions, because someone might not want to sit through, a 30-minute, 45-minute
I
hour
wonder-
presentation, but
I mean, the other thing is I
Good
do have
question.
another conversation with the superintendent coming up.
Well, and I'm just wondering too, if we could do just a quick impromptu with you and Bob and Troy and just, a meet and greet, come ask questions about the budget, something very casual, so somebody doesn't have to sit through a 4-hour meeting.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I,
certainly.
I'm not crazy about putting hours of work into producing another video with like links to everything and all that when I could be in classrooms, like helping teachers teach better.
Or the the elementary school has the play coming up, Frozen, which
Right.
opens
Mhm.
up Thursday, March 21st. What if we had a table with even unmanned with flyers of information, maybe even a box, put your questions here. And then follow up with answers on social or wherever, on social media, on, I don't know. Pass
That
around,
might,
pass
that
around.
might be a
Right.
really good
Right.
idea, because
Yeah.
you're gonna have 4 days of,
Yes,
And we also have
That
fall
way.
sports banquet on Monday. We could do the
Right.
same thing at the sports banquet.
Yeah.
That's almost
Yeah.
the whole high school
yeah.
and middle
Make
school.
some kind of
Yeah.
a box that
But-
communicates,
So have little slips of paper. with
Yes,
Writing
with
utensils,
whatever
and write
information
whatever
you
question
have.
top, drop it in, and we'll make a frequently asked questions out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
put it on the
don't,
webpage.
I don't know if you would
and
want
that'll
to have,
be, and that's
Okay.
easy, something that you can
And
cross-reference. to the budget.
probably we're gonna get a small handful of questions is my prediction, but
Right.
still, we could still do it a short.
A
FAQ.
small handful is better than 0.
And
Yeah.
then maybe just
Right.
a handout of just a quick summary of the budget.
Right.
and where to find information.
Yeah.
Right,
Um,
I can link to put the link for the
Yeah, like
presentation.
maybe we could leave
and
copies of the budget, not just at the town hall, but they can find maybe at the Wheeler Library or something. You can
Right.
find copies of the budget here and here. You can put your questions there, maybe even put a question thing at the Wheeler Library.
And
Just
Troy,
right on their table.
I don't think these are the things that you should be doing. I think I mean, if maybe Irma can help you with some of this.
I'd be
this
willing
stuff,
to,
Or.
I'd be
Well, I
willing
don't,
to
I
do
mean,
it.
I don't mind producing a summary video myself. It's really quite easy.
Yeah.
But, it would be simply a summary video, because
I
people
just
don't
mean the
want to.
posting and all that stuff.
Well, and you
printing,
have a
the-
couple of board members who may need to attend multiple nights of this upcoming thing at the elementary school, no matter what, which means that sitting out front while people are coming in is not a problem. I
That would be
mean,
really helpful.
I think both of us will probably be at all of those nights. Oh, you've got one in there too. Okay, so we have 3 board
We have 3
members who
there.
have people
And
involved in
I'll
this
be watching
production.
my grandson on Thursday night,
So
Westleton.
I have no problem sitting there. I only need to see the show once. My kid's
Okay.
only running the late board.
Yeah, just let me know.
All right.
Just let me know what days you want me to do it.
That's perfect. Okay, so I'll maybe take all of these ideas. Christine, tell me more about the informal meet and greet. So like,
Well,
do that
maybe you don't-
here?
Yeah, either do it here or even maybe you could do it at the library. That's always a great space. But I think if you're doing these 2 events, you may not need to do that.
Okay,
It might not be that important if we can really hit parents at these 2 events. My concern always is the people that aren't parents and aren't in
Right.
the school.
right.
So the library might be a nice place for people, there is half of our population that does not have children in school. And
I
they,
think more than half.
so we want to represent them as well. So I think maybe something at the library.
Sure, when is your next coffee hour?
I think it's April 2nd or 4th. And it is in the morning. It's at 7:45 and 8:45. It's a morning.
Maybe we could make that a thing.
Yeah, like a budget information.
Yeah, and then
Okay.
you might be able to hit some of the seniors and things with that, or maybe do it at the senior center.
Okay. So why don't I send what I think is a summary of what we decided, just to make sure everybody's on the same page and okay with it? And I'm not forgetting anything, and then put it together. I love the idea about the play and the sports banquet. It's really well timed. Okay, perfect. Thank you. We have some policy approvals and first reads. Chet, do you want to take us through those 2 new policies?
I think these are just first reads, no matter, like, we don't necessarily need to approve in the moment. It's just, there were 2 things that came up on the most recent CABE review review, the email that they send out, for 5141.5 and 6148. Both of them are technically mandatory. It's the suicide prevention and intervention, the 5141.5 is a semi-mandated policy, meaning that we have to have something similar to it. We could address it in a different way. However, CABE is suggesting that districts address it in this way based on state legislation. And then the FAFSA completion is all based on the new requirements regarding high school students and FAFSA completion. So that's also a mandated one based on new language. We already have something in place. This would be an adjustment to the one that we have. FAFSA has, so they have new rules regarding the students in the process for FAFSA.
So that's basically saying if you don't want to do the FAFSA, you don't get to opt out.
I'm not gonna lie, I did not read the legislation. What I did was take the policy that was stated as mandated language update from CABE on that. So I did not read the new legislation. Again, it's meant to be a first read.
There is a waiver. I see the waiver.
But-
Okay.
So then,
In the waiver.
Chad, do we just want to put this on the agenda? It looks, I mean, it's
There, I mean,
mandated.
well, and they are, I mean, I just didn't want to give somebody a first read and then request approval immediately. The bylaws, I thought we need to get the bylaws on there because of
Yep.
the fact that if we're going to take
Pick
up
'em up.
bylaws at all, we need to wait 4 weeks before we can actually discuss them. Which means that if we don't get them on an agenda with numbers, we can't even consider them moving forward. So those are first reads, just literally starting chronologically, just to get something on.
My understanding is that we can discuss the bylaws, we just can't vote on a change without them being out there for a month. So we would be able to discuss them at the next meeting, we just couldn't vote on them.
We cannot make changes to bylaws
Correct,
within 4 weeks.
correct.
I am fine if people are comfortable with the other policies that are in play. Again, I consider them to be kind of state legislation process, not, hey, we have opinions on this sort of things, but I also have no problem. We don't need to do it immediately. It needs to be done within this year, so.
This first one, P5141.5A. So we have to have a policy, but it doesn't necessarily have to be this. Is that right? But this is what they're suggesting?
We have to have something similar.
Yeah, we have to have a policy in place that states something similar to what is stated in this policy.
Troy, do you have thoughts on the suicide prevention and intervention policy and how that might impact your staff?
No, I think it's fine. I mean, we have to train people every year on certain things, and that's just one more. Which we're already doing, but I think we're gonna have to make sure we do it. Well, yeah, right. It's hard to do everything with fidelity because there's so much. But it's obviously very important, but notice there is part of this is that we're gonna survey the kids. And I know that had been an issue last year. We talked about surveying the kids, and it's saying we'll use a state of Connecticut Department of Education approved assessment to like a risk assessment type thing. So I just want to make sure the board realizes that that's there, but it is best practice of what's going on in the state.
What is the approved risk assessment? Because there's a couple different risk assessments that they're turning people to these days. One of which is it's CSTAG. And that's also for threat assessment as well. And that ends up being, I mean, you can kind of modify it, but they recommend that you don't, and that ends up being like a 14-page document as part of the risk assessment. So I'm just curious which one the state had actually recommended for suicide prevention, if it was CSTAG or if it was something else.
Yeah, I could bring you more information next time on that.
My question would be, in regards to the legislation, do we need to be this detailed in our policy, or does this lock you in a bit in terms of what you're supposed to do? So for example, are paragraphs 2, 3, and 4 necessary per the legislation, or do we want to have, omit that? I don't want us to be approving something that.
If you were to take a look at our current policy, we have it posted actually with a regulation that makes this look like nothing, and I can guarantee that we don't follow that regulation at the moment. Just so even one way or another, we should do something about our current one.
Right.
Just so people, like, if you were to look at the 5141.5 right now, our regulation is posted onto our list, and it's extensive. As is the statements of how we have to react,
Yeah.
what constitutes different things. It doesn't give much leeway at all. So just as a heads up that's what we currently have on the books.
Right, and it sounds like we have to adjust it.
Yeah, and I could research this and bring you if it's even developed by the Connecticut Suicide Advisory Board, the plan, right, based on a statewide plan, risk factor. Oh, these are just risk factors.
Right.
There's an assessment down in where it says after the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the board directs superintendent to implement an assessment recommended by the Connecticut State Department of Education for determining suicide risk. So I could see what is that assessment recommended by the Connecticut State Department of Education and bring that to you next time, if it would be helpful, so you could see what that is.
I just want to make sure that we're giving you a policy that works for our district and we're still meeting
Yeah.
the
Well,
regulations.
I mean, I think it probably would work, this policy, but I just know there could be some pushback on an assessment to determine this.
The assessment, I believe, is in crisis moment. Yes. Like that's simply what you're going, the set of questions that you're going to ask a student who has demonstrated suicidal ideation or something similar. Your school psychologist or counseling department should have this in place already. It's simply do you currently have access to weapons at home? Do you, like, those types of questioning that you go through with them
Right.
in order to
Yeah.
figure out where
No,
they
you're right.
stand in that moment and whether or not they can be sent home, whether or not, like, what
Who should be
level of
notified?
You're
steps
right.
need to happen.
You're right.
So that's not a general, it's not a general
forward.
student assessment. It's simply in that moment.
I stand corrected. I think Chet's right on that. I was thinking more like a survey for all kids, like a tier 1 kind of scan of how's everybody doing, but that's not what this says.
I think we
Chet's-
should get, I think we would get some parent
Yeah.
pushback if we
Yeah,
just put
well,
out a
that-
mass survey aspect.
Yeah,
So-
yeah,
But
yeah.
this is simply,
This is for kids who are exhibiting distress.
how do we make
Right.
sure that they are safe after they have already
Right.
stepped into that situation that might be dangerous. So.
Yep. Chet's
Okay.
right. Chet's right. Oh, was my microphone on?
All right, any other questions on any of these? So this is our first read and we'll discuss them further. Troy, thanks for getting whatever info you think will be helpful in making sure this works for us. All right then, Board of Ed comments for future agenda items. I think now we know that one of those things is going to be finalizing the before and after care. Other things?
If we could maybe focus towards this summer, working on regrouping on board goals, making sure they're aligned with what our district is looking for from us.
Sounds good. Anyone else? Okay, so I think we could look for public comment now. None in the room, any online chat? Okay, and then with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Look, Alex isn't here. It didn't happen fast. Motion to adjourn?
All those in favor?
Hi.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. This meeting is adjourned.